Hello, we're talking about Ford today. My name is Claudia Nasrella. We also have Alyssa, Carmela, Melissa, and Amanda. First, we're going to be talking about their internal analysis with their strengths and their weaknesses. Their strengths focus on sustainability and efficient technology. They're experts in manufacturing, research and development, and marketing. They want to meet the demand for electric vehicles to meet the customer's needs, so they want to expand their line of how many vehicles they have on hand. Their weaknesses have significant underfunding pensions. They cannot match capabilities and sales volume as their competitors can, which causes a poor reputation with their investors. With their threats, their growing presence of Germany and Japanese automakers are slowing them down. Some companies have a head start in alternative fuel vehicles as well. Some opportunities that Ford carries is that they have technology for self-driving cars and could expand into China or India. They could also collaborate with Uber and Lyft to have them use their Ford vehicles and get discounts if they do use their vehicle. When it comes to the competitive forces, we have competitive rivalry, bargaining power of buyers, bargaining power of suppliers, threats and substitutions, and threats of new entry. First, I'll be talking about the competitive rivalry. The competition is aggressive with the big three. The auto industries have high exit barriers, which cause them to compete with each other rather than to close their businesses because of the high cost in investments. The bargaining power of buyers or consumers is that the customers have the freedom to switch. They have the opportunity to switch to any company other than Ford. They could go to GM or Tesla, etc., and they actually get discounts for switching. For bargaining power of suppliers, Ford produces many goods that other companies rely on external suppliers for. Unfortunately, the limited number of suppliers available for the components that Ford does not produce allows suppliers to influence prices. Their threats are that they have several options like public transportation, Uber, Lyft, and bicycles. But depending on what area you live in, it's very difficult. Like for New York example, you have the subway transportation, but in Michigan we don't. Threats of new entry. Automotive industries have high entry costs, which makes it hard to get capital and resources to enter the market. So it becomes very expensive to enter the market. For the macro environment, economic conditions are always changing. Some external factors that are significant to Ford are the U.S. economy, the growth rate, and the strength of the U.S. dollar. Depending on how the U.S. market is doing, Ford could either succeed or they can go downhill. The industry life cycle, Ford falls under the mature stage as a whole as a company, but depending on their different divisions, like their electric vehicle market, that is still in its embryonic stage.
Ford Motor Company is trying to be one step ahead of their competitors. By doing this, they need to challenge their teams by being more innovative, having a strategic strategy, and being efficient at the same time. In order for Ford to do that, they need to really be advanced with their technology. An option that Ford has provided to its customers is that the Amazon Echo Smart Speaker and Alexa Virtual Assistant has partnered with Ford in order to have more variety for customers instead of the regular Apple CarPlay or the Android. So now this also allows consumers to deal with vehicles that allow their homes to be accessed simply by a command with Alexa's help. Also, Ford has used a vertical integration strategy, which is a risk in itself because knowing that Ford is all more inventory on hand, they've learned that it's easier to own part of suppliers, and this will help reduce costs and competition. So this started back in the 1920s when they owned their own coal and iron mines, timber, rubber, and had their own freights and railroads. So you're covering a lot of the supply chain, which is very important with Ford's just-in-time strategies. Or also increasing efficiency by their product settings. Ford has moved production to Mexico, but they're also bringing back employment into the United States. They've made a deal with the UAW in 2015 that is going to open up a new plant here in Wayne, Michigan, that's going to create roughly about 4,000 jobs. This is going to really help bring back the economy in Michigan, show that Ford is interested in their employees and the people in Michigan, and to be a better company all around compared to our competitors such as GM and Chrysler. So Ford has a business strategy where they have scorecards in order to do their part in the automotive industry to have the high quality, have high efficiency, and to look better outside. So what they do is that they meet with each business unit within the company and set goals for themselves. Each business unit has to coincide with each other in order for this to work. If one department falls down, another one's going with it. So it's best to keep good communication, and how they do that is having quarterly meetings in order to track their targets and to find out where they are at with that level. So overall, they also create accountability, which is very important in creating their value roadmap, which is specified in their business plan reviews, special attention reviews, and additional governance forms.
When looking at Ford's technology strategy, one can see that they are developing ways to gain a sustainable competitive advantage in the industry while continuing to lower cost and increase profits. To continue moving forward, improved fuel efficient and advanced technology vehicles, Ford continues to participate in the Automotive Technology Vehicle Manufacturing Loan Incentive Program, which is with the Department of Energy. As of 2015, they have borrowed $5.9 billion through this program to invest in advanced manufacturing technologies, such as Ford Freedom fabrication technology, 3D printing expansion, robotic innovations, and virtual factories. Another focus of Ford is to accelerate development of the new products that customers will want and value. Ford has made it a priority to drive innovation in every part of their business and to employ an innovative mindset. Ford realizes individuals drive innovation and the importance of driving employees with strong technical skills. So in May 2015, Ford announced a plan to expand their efforts by opening 4 academies in Detroit that will educate 1,400 high school students, giving them the strong technical skills that they need to become an innovator in the automotive industry. Since the 1800s, internal combustion engines have been the standard. What was the norm back then began to change in the late 1900s, and now there's an urgent need to reduce the carbon footprint, produce better fuel-efficient vehicles, and connected cars. Ford recognized this paradigm shift and began focusing on new technology for better fuel economy, technology to improve safety, and technology to bring mobility to the world. Ford's director of autonomous vehicles research announced that Ford would not be a first mover of autonomous vehicles. He said that Ford is focused on becoming a leader in mobility. So in March 2016, Ford rolled out a subsidiary company, Ford Smart Mobility, which develops commercially ready mobility services and vehicles. This can be an opportunity for significant growth and will assist them in developing and improving solutions to the current mobility issues in the auto industry. Bill Ford states that it is important that Ford be a leader in creating industry standards for mobility by being a great integrator of technologies and services. Now moving on to global strategy. Upon reviewing Ford's global strategy, it's obvious that Ford realizes the importance of developing and implementing a global strategy in order to remain competitive in the industry. Their global strategy actually helps reduce the cost of goods sold, increase the percentage of sales, and significantly benefits them with the opportunities worldwide. Over the years, Ford has transitioned into global operations to increase market shares worldwide and offset the slowing growth in the North American market due to saturation. Unfortunately, these expansions are not always successful, and Ford plans to close 2 unprofitable ventures in Japan and Indonesia, where the big 3, Ford, GM, and Fiat Chrysler, hold only 0.3% of the auto sales. Ford is in talk with Asian partner Chang'an Automobile Group to begin manufacturing Ford's Lincoln vehicles in China, which would make them an export base In the past year, Ford began selling their luxury Lincoln vehicles models in China, and due to high sales, Ford thinks China could replace the U.S. as Lincoln's largest market before the decade is over. Manufacturing in China would save Ford 25% on import tax, which would allow them to reduce costs and offer the Lincoln at a more competitive price in the premium market. Ford expects profits in the Asian region to double last year's pre-tax profit of $765 million. Furthermore, Ford plans to expand operations in South Africa at its Silverton assembly plant, where it will produce the all-new Ford Everest. Also, Ford is building a new plant in Mexico, which will double its production capacity in Mexico, and it will be investing $1.8 billion in China to expand its research and development in technologies that will attract the Chinese consumer.
Corporate level strategy analysis. In 2007, Ford adopted the One Ford Plan, which expands on the company's 4-point business plan. The plan consists of aggressively restructure to operate profitability at customers want and value, finance our plan and improve our balance sheet, work together effectively as one team. The goal of this plan was to create an exciting and viable company delivering profitable growth. Corporate governance. Ford has several policies that balance interests of many involved in the company. The board of directors tends to meet 7 times a year to discuss the following: review, approve, and monitor fundamental financial and business strategies and major company actions. Review and discuss reports by management on the performance of the company, its plans, products, and process. Assist major risks facing the company, and review and approve strategies for addressing such risks. Ensure processes are in place for maintaining the integrity and reputation of the company, the integrity of the financial statements, compliance with the law and company policy, the integrity of relationships with customers and suppliers, and integrity of relationships with other company stakeholders. Ford strives to help local and global communities by better understanding the environmental issues affecting the country. Ford has designed a corporate program to promote tolerance and equal opportunity and actively support social and environmental protection programs. Ford provides grants to fund local education and not-for-profit projects in rural communities. Ford is developing a less effort compliance approach to make it as possible for employees to do the right thing. In 2015, launched the mobile application The Right Way.
Just a disclaimer note. I evaluated Ford's financials from 2011 through 2015. So when viewing these charts, 5 years ago would be 2011, going up to the current year, which reflects 2015. Ford Motor Company has a market capitalization of approximately $47.8 billion, which is second to General Motors, who has $52.2 billion. When looking at the past 5 years, their stock price has not had any significant increase, from a high of $15.43 per share in 2013 to closing at $12.04 on November 25, 2016. Ford's chief financial officer associates the drop in stock value because of the significant cost invested in launching the Super Duty pickup truck and consumer demand in North America leveling off. However, Ford has experienced profits in each of the past 5 years, with its most recent net income of $7.4 billion in 2015. Ford posted a significant drop in income in 2014. Analysts anticipate slow growth earnings over the next 5 years at an average annual rate of 0.25%, resulting in negative earnings growth. Ford finished 2005 stronger than the prior 2 years, ending 2015 with a net income of $7.37 billion, mainly due to a $4.78 billion increase in revenue. Ford's revenue, as stated, has increased, and it has had slight changes over the years, seeing a 3.8% revenue growth in 2015. When reviewing the competitors and analysis, we will find that profit margins are small for all four U.S. automotive companies. Ford's profit margin of 4.9% appears to be healthy when comparing to Fiat Chrysler's profit margin of 0.1%, and Tesla, who saw negative profit margins in 2015. Ford's return on assets ratio has been less than 3.5% in the past 5 years, once again trailing its competitor General Motors. A final measure of profit is the return on equity, which measures how well a company uses investments to generate earnings growth. Ford has done quite well in returns on equity over the years, finishing with a 27.6% return, slightly ahead of General Motors' 25.5% return in 2015. When it comes to liquidity, Ford has crushed its competitors when it comes to reassuring its stakeholders that the company can meet its financial obligations with a current ratio of 2.12 and a quick ratio of 2.02. As far as activity ratios, Ford has an extremely low receivable turnover ratio and the worst of its competitors, because their average collection of receivables occurs approximately 1.5 times a year, which is extremely insufficient. However, Ford does manage its inventory by ensuring that the company does not have stagnant inventory due to overpurchasing. Ford is managing its inventory efficiently compared to its competitors. Stockholders' return ratios. Ford has a return on asset of 3.40%, a return on equity of 27.6%, which is higher than its competitors. Most stockholders have taken a loss with a total stockholder return of negative 0.053. And of the four companies compared, Tesla is the only one that had a high price earning of 40.5 compared to Ford's extremely low price earnings ratio of 7.6.
All right, so I'm going to go over a couple potential threats for Ford as of recent. President-elect Donald Trump has recently stated that he has big plans for the future to fight Mexican imports, which could essentially kill the small car in America. He's recently vowed to impose a 35% tariff on cars imported into the United States from Mexico. Recently, as of September of 2016, Ford announced that they would be moving their small car division in the next 2 years to Mexico, basically no longer building any small cars in the U.S. Ford CEO Mark Fields has stated that it's hard for Ford to make any money on vehicles manufactured in the U.S. because gasoline prices have been so low. Another concern of Ford is that they're essentially forced to move production of small cars back to the U.S., which will leave them no choice but to raise prices, leading to a loss in sales and revenues. The threat of raised tariffs for products coming into the United States from Mexico will impose a great threat to Ford and the automotive industry as a whole. Neither Ford nor the consumer is going to absorb the extra cost. Ford should have extensive meetings with Trump's transition team and come up with a way to guarantee that moving plants to Mexico will not cause any loss of jobs here in the U.S. They should also move their production of their more expensive vehicles into the U.S. Rather than India, because that's where they currently are producing their more expensive SUVs. Bringing the production of the SUVs and trucks into the U.S. will help Ford cut transportation costs, as well as costs across the border, and decrease lead times. Another issue that they're currently facing is the competition for market share of electric vehicles. In today's society, people have become more aware of the negative environmental effects that gasoline-powered vehicles have caused. And since consumers are becoming more conscious, there has been an increase in demand for electric vehicles. Automakers are now racing to capture the majority of consumers who are looking to purchase the electric vehicles. Um, Ford is one of the automakers making big moves by continuing to innovate and looking for ways to make their electric product line better than any other automaker. Currently, Ford's offering vehicles such as the EcoBoost, hybrid, plug-in hybrid, and all-electric vehicles to the market to try to appeal to those consumers that are looking for more environmentally friendly vehicles. So Ford's strategy is to come up with electric vehicles that will put them among the leaders or in a leadership position against companies like Tesla and GM that Claudia had explained earlier. They're seeking further development of their electric vehicles that are currently on the market. It's also become a challenge for Ford to overcome the consumer fear that electric cars will run out of batteries and potentially strand them somewhere out on the road. Since the electric market vehicles in its infancy stage, it's important that Ford gains as much revenue as possible. They'll need to invest a significant amount of money in research and development to come up with a battery that's going to last longer than 200 miles on one single charge. According to Bloomberg, research has shown that consumers are actually more willing to buy electric vehicles if the driving range is significantly more than 200 miles, and also keeping the price well under $35,000. Ford currently has currently has an electric vehicle on the market. It's called the Ford Electric, but the vehicle only has a driving range of about 118 miles in the city and 96 on the highway. This could cause a huge inconvenience for their consumers because they'd have for drivers that have longer drives to and from work. They might not have accessible charging stations around. In order for Ford to gain a competitive advantage over their competitors like Tesla and GM, they'll need to implement a diversification strategy that would require integration between their R&D division, production, and marketing functions. This way they can leverage valuable resources such as knowledge across the company. So the following are the 3 questions that we'd like the class to answer. Do you think discontinuing the production of small cars in the U.S. will impact Ford's bottom line? Second question is, Ford does not plan to be the first to market with a fully autonomous vehicle. Do you think focusing on mobility is a good alternative for Ford? And then the last one is President-elect Trump has recently vowed to impose a 35% tariff on cars imported to the U.S. from Mexico. How would a 35% tariff impact the U.S. auto industry as a whole? Thank you so much for listening to our presentation.